Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. This is kind of a tired video just because just been doing work, been getting settled into the new job. Nice job. Just very happy. Just happy to have a job now and making some reasonable money, starting my savings. Making the big plans for moving out, hopefully in a few years. But more on that later. Separate video we'll do for that. For January, once again, it's kind of like it's kind of a multitude of things for film. On one side of things, it's like the dumpster month. You just whatever studios don't have faith in, they just kind of dump in this month. I know some people like to dispel it, with some of the outliers so that, films that actually do well. That doesn't change the optics of the studio though. When they decide to put a film out right at the beginning of the year, it's just that's just luck at that point. It's just happy, circumstances that the movie ended up doing better than they thought. But it doesn't change the fact that they thought the movie was going to be a pile of trash. So that's why they dump it in the beginning of the year, so that they can just deal with it then and not deal with it later. Um, but that's one way to look at it. And then of course, it's the whole awards thing, blah, 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 Oscars, Golden Globes, like whatever. I just don't give a shit about that. And then there's also the festivals, which are happening right now, specifically Sundance, which um, I just uh, I just got a confirmation for one screening that I will be doing at Sundance. Um, One online screening, just because financially, like I said, we're just trying to keep things tight. And the film that I picked is one that I'm interested in. I was kind of waiting on reviews to see if it was going to be worth just putting up the money. I mean, it's not how much money, but you know what I mean. It's like, is it worth basically buying the ticket? And from what I heard, it's decent. And I won't say what it is just because, well, I'm gonna watch it and we're gonna review it. Um, so I will be doing something Sundance oriented this weekend. Um, and it's based on a movie that I want to see. I mean, it's not just because I'm just, wanting to, just talk about Sundance or what have you. I generally actually have an interest for that film, specifically with the actors involved. So you'll find out in a few days what that movie is. But I actually do want to talk about Sundance proper though, because um, about like the movies this year. I mean, generally speaking, I don't really care for festivals. Like, just if people were to like mention a name, like the Berlin thing, Cannes, it's like I don't really care. I mean, Cannes is kind of the fun one because that's it's in France, right? Yeah, it's that's where all the fun stuff happens with the protest and all the weird shenanigans. That's where a lot of the just weird stuff, man. Like, I think last year they even had like some weird stuff happen. Sundance usually, nothing really happens. And lately, like it seems like even this year, like it just people don't really care. Like there's not been a lineup of movies that people are generally interested to see. Seems very heavily focused this year on LGBTQ centric stories, or at least encompassing, like utilizing LGBTQ members to highlight certain elements within stories that perhaps are not of LGBTQ messages, but at least are utilizing LGBTQ figures to represent such ideas. So it's very heavily leaning in that direction. It seems that a lot of people are kind of mediocre, kind of about it, just because there's a lack of variety. And It's usually the case with the festivals is that they don't really care for variety. They say they do, but really like they kind of lean towards something. And um, I forget who it was, but I remember a guy. I think I mentioned it before, but a little bit earlier when I was doing this channel a few years ago, I got a message on one of my or message a comment on one of the videos about a guy. I think it had to do with the People's Joker, if you guys remember that whole thing, which I'm pretty surprised has like gained as the traction that it's gotten. I mean, like yes and no because of again LGBTQ centric themes, so there's kind of more of a swaying factor involved there, and there's also a hesitance to say no already because of what could happen. So it's like you're kind of put in a situation where you're like, perhaps we should accept this because it's important, even if it's not. Um, but in that video, some guy was like, he was like doing the whole festival thing, um, and doing a festival run as they call it, and he was like telling me about how some festivals would reject his film based on like certain criterias. The fact that his crew was like all white or something like that, like something very like dumb. It had nothing to do with the actual quality of the film, or at least a opinion of said film. It had everything to do with just the the people surrounding that film, and it's like I don't like that festivals make it a point to make their whole event about the people in the movies or the people working on those movies and less so to do with the actual movies themselves. And that's why perhaps lately just people are just so just pretty just with the whole thing just because there's not a lot of variety and there's a less of an emphasis on storytelling because here's the thing I want to talk about the most in regards to the festival this year. When talking about Sundance proper, let me just get in here just because there we go. Like talking Sundance proper this year. We talked about this with I want to say Cannes. I think this happened at Cannes. I mean, it happens generally with festivals now, but it's like there's you read all the headlines coming out from like all these movies, and they're all within the same sphere. They're all doing the same things, which is graphic content, crazy sex scenes, and shock, which is a word that we've talked about before. Shock, shock value. We've addressed that before on the channel about how many films, nowadays it seems, but specifically in the Hollywood's culture, they're leaning so hard into the shock value and thinking that that is rich storytelling when it's not. You know, I did a whole video on that, and there was um, a good majority of you that that can understand. That there was some that didn't, and hey, I mean, opinions are opinions, right? Um, I would argue though that the like like some of the stuff that people really liked this year, or last year, like Poor Things, for example, which was kind of one of those big talking, one of those big movies that people talked about this year, last year. Again, I'm sorry, I'm a little tired, so my words might not be the best today. Um, but but if you saw my review for that, it was just like the movie had like a crazy amount of sex scenes. I don't know if it was double digits or not, like if it was like 10 or so, but it was close, it was a lot, and there was no real need for all of that, and I wouldn't say it was offensive or anything, but it was just like it was just odd. Like, why is it there? Same thing for for Napoleon with that whole sex scene. It's like, what? And then for No Hard Feelings, um, and as I said before in that video about shock value, the the excuse for the shock value, not just, let's just go even beyond like sexual, stuff, anything like grotesque, anything like super graphic. Um, Usually it is because it has comedic undertones, or that there is a strategical, there's some underlining uh, uh, layer of humor. Um, and that's usually the excuse put for it. And like this is what modern storytelling looks like. You know, as much as people want to maybe disagree with that and think that modern storytelling is more rudimentary, more to what it actually is, it's not. The way that a lot of people want to portray their stories nowadays, basically just to get their name out there, is to be grotesque, is to be shocking, is to be vile, to be crude, to be suggestive, just weird, you know. And it seems more so now, like, because this wasn't really accepted like a few years ago, like I would say like 2017, 2018, around that time, that the sort of mentality was not um was really acceptable. People were still pretty tame. And I'm talking mainstream. I mean, the indies are the indies, but mainstream wise, Hollywood proper, they never really dabbled with this sort of thing. They were just kind of content with being basically like family friendly, with some edge, but not, not crazy or nothing too extensive. Now it seems like it seems like that's more pushed and that's more out there, and like I just don't know what it is with that. I don't understand what that push, you know, what that means artistically, what it means to have sort of like um, all this sort of representation of ideas within packaging of graphic images within thousands of sex scenes. Like, I just, like the shock value is is deemed in a negative light because shock value promotes a certain response. We've said this before about shock value. The difference between shock value and like artistic merit is that the merit has a comment that's resonating. Like you can look at that scene and you can go, okay, that makes sense. I can get what they're doing, and I can understand the point of why they're doing it. There's an artistic edge to it. There's a meaning behind that. And it like I said, it resonates. Shock value is when you just look at something and you just go, okay, what the fuck is that? You know? Like I'll put it this way, like artistic merit is like a painting, You look at a painting and if the painting has dimensions to it, you can look at something and just go, wow, that is fascinating. I could see where you can see that interpretation. I can see where you could see that. Or perhaps it's so blatant, but you can still, grasp the whole idea. And you're like, wow, that's interesting. And then the other side of that, imagine if you see a picture of a penis, it's like, that's the mentality it seems now for the mainstream culture, is that they're more accepting of a dick pic than they are of this sort of thing over here. Which usually this thing over here is more stewed in the indie scene, more than anything. I mean, independents all operate also on shock value as well, depending on the mentality of the filmmaker. It seems to me, like I said at the beginning, it's like I will only imagine that you're doing this just to get attention, Like, that's the reason why you do shock value in storytelling. Like, the actual idea of shock value. That's the only reason why. And it's to disguise, like I said before in the last video, it's just to disguise the hollowness of your story. It's just to pack your story and make it seem more meaningful and seem more deep, when really it's surface level. It's just bare bones. And you have all this surrounding it with the hopes that people will go, "Ooh," when really it's just images. Again, it's just like a dick pic. Like, I just, I don't know. If you can find more meaning in a dick pic than you can with a well crafted painting that can be interpretive or has a very meaningful presentation of an idea, the word you're looking for is crazy, because it's just it's just there for a response. And it's as if, like, filmmakers, like, and I'm not sure, like, if it's because it seems like it's the studio's thing, because like I said, this thing wasn't around, you know I'm talking mainstream wise. Like, this thing wasn't around in 2017, 2018, but now it's just like Hollywood's just cool with it. I'm not sure if that's just the cultural, like, landscape, if that's just how things are changing. Speaking more on that in that political ground, but on other things, I'm not sure if, like, with time, everything's just becoming more loosey goosey. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know if it's just the studio or if it's just the filmmakers. I happen to believe that it's more or less the studio, because the filmmakers, they have their visions, but it's not their movie. I mean, despite what some people will tell you, producers, executives, that's their movie. They're the ones putting up the money. They're the ones who are giving you the green light ultimately to make said movie in the first place. The director's there is just to guide the ship, just to make sure that the thing works, just to make sure the investment was worth it, you know. And that's purely what it is. But ultimately, like, if you were to define storytelling nowadays, it totally is just shock value, because it's either shock value or mediocrity. That's the only terms that you can use for modern storytelling nowadays, because the assumption is that if we stick to a formula, then it will resonate. Or if we be as exaggerative and just loon, like if we just, again, just put up a dick pic on screen, then, or just have loads of sex scenes or this and that, be as crude and, to an extent, offensive, depending on the content, the context, and representation of such scene, they think that will also resonate as well. Speaking, again, Hollywood proper, because the indies are going to be the indies, and that all falls more into the vein of the artists, where this is more of like a studio thing, but more or less a studio thing, because they have more of a say on things. Um, Whereas, like, in other aspects, it's more self-financed, and more, hence more, there's more control within from the filmmaker. Um, it's just, it's not it. It's not really shocking to know that the shock value is taking place, and that is the authority now. That's how storytelling is driven now, is by that desire to get responses. And audiences believe, it seems, that sort of mentality is meaningful. And that's sad, because it's not. That mentality is not meaningful. It's more gross and just it's just empty, because take away those images and really see what's going on. It's just Not a whole lot. Um, so, and it seems like that's where it's going to keep going, you know? So, so yeah. But hopefully the film I picked, my light almost went out. um, hopefully the film that I picked for Sundance, the one that I'm seeing, hopefully that's not stewed in this mentality, but I have a feeling it won't be, but we'll see. But but yeah, just seeing all these headlines, it's just like, yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that this is just the way of things, you know, not just in Hollywood, but it seems like just the rising mentality overall, you know, for both Hollywood and it seems for like for indies, it seems like driven by that shock value, you know, that whole mentality that seems to be the driving force, and it's just I just don't think that that's good storytelling. Um, it just never resonates for me. It always feels more cheap in design, and I could just see more of the holes in your story when you present your narrative that way. So, you know, sent more. My whole point is that like studios, like this wasn't a thing a few years ago. The indies usually operate on this front. You know, that they sometimes, you know, depending on the filmmaker, they will do that or they won't. Um, but but it's like I'm surprised that studios are like so allowing of that sort of thing. And festivals also, again, like presuming that is good material, you know. I get it's subjective, but still it's like it's not. So yeah, so we've talked about it before, but just seeing the headlines again, it's just I don't know. Just felt like making a comment on it, kind of doing like a part two, I guess. But it was ultimately kind of a ramble, but ultimately I'm just, you know, the way of the future of storytelling is either shock value or sticking to some kind of formula and not being purely original. And that's sad. And it's just to clarify, everybody's doing it. You know, the indies, the mainstream, everybody's doing it. What's surprising is that the mainstream is like following into that, you know, sort of thing. That's what's surprising to me. And how dominant that mentality has become, you know, generally speaking, with both indies and um, with mainstream. Because it was kind of like tempered for a while. It would be something that was like there, but not really the main point of conversation. Now you have all these actors like talking about like when it comes to interview time, you know, it's like, is it any surprise that any of these people are getting questions like, how was it filming that crazy sex scene? How was it, you know, doing this and that? Like, I just heard that Saltburn movie that I didn't give a shit about. I just heard that they had like a hot tub scene or something. You know, it's like what it's just funny to me how the oh my god, my mic. It's just funny to me how the mentality is changing over time. We used to be more tempered, but now we're just basically saying fuck it at this point and just kind of doing whatever. So so yeah, so it's it's just not that interesting. And it's sad to me that a lot of people will find it interesting because to me it's just more empty than full. But you guys let me know your thoughts. Excuse me for all the mic and all that stuff. Again, just kind of tired, so just kind of not being as polished. But hopefully my thoughts were well articulated. I'm gonna go probably take a nap now. But you guys know your thoughts on shock value, just in general. You know, what do you believe the mentality of storytelling is nowadays? Do you guys believe that it's shock value? Do you guys believe it's something else? Um, Anybody seen anything from Sundance? Was there anything good? From what I've been hearing, not a whole lot. Um, there was another one, like Brief History of a Family, which I was kind of interested in. Heard some good stuff about that. There was a film, I think it's called Love, Death, with David Schwimmer, which I was kind of interested in, but kind of just decided no. The one that I am seeing is the one that I was the most curious to see. Um, and from what I'm hearing some good stuff. But you guys, let me know if you guys are at Sundance or just tuning in online. Let me know if anything's good in the comment section below. And that's going to be it from me, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video.